September 14th, 2021. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people, and the peace treaties bind us all. Just before we start with the formal agenda tonight, I do have two proclamations. I'd like to proclaim Orange Shirt Day on September 30th, 2021. Whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Summary Report, call to action number 80, calls for a national day to honor residential school survivors, their families, and communities, and to ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. And whereas Orange Shirt Day is being celebrated across Canada and beyond as a day to commemorate the survivors of residential schools, to remember those who did not survive, and to reaffirm our commitment to ensuring a better future for all children. And whereas the Council of the City of Beaumont supports the importance of creating awareness and encouraging communities to support a safe and inclusive environment for generations of children to come, now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim September 30th, 2021 as Orange Shirt Day in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 23rd day of August, 2021. And I have one more further proclamation to make this evening. National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, also on September 30th, 2021. Whereas in the words of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Canada's residential school system for Indigenous children was an education system in name only, and was created with the purpose of separating Indigenous children from their communities to weaken family ties and links to their culture. And whereas these institutions existed in Canada for more than 100 years and well into the 1990s, inflicting trauma on thousands of Indigenous families across multiple generations. And whereas the Truth and Reconciliation's final report details 94 calls to action intended to reconcile our country's past by acknowledging the harmful legacy of residential schools, honoring the culture and history of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit survivors, and building a new vision based on mutual respect. And whereas the Canadian government enacted action number 80 by declaring September 30th of each year as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and whereas Beaumont aims to celebrate the contributions and aspirations of people from all backgrounds and walks of life and develop a greater understanding and appreciation for the community's rich, unique, and diverse culture. And whereas Beaumont also seeks to foster an inclusive, safe, and welcoming community for Indigenous peoples, now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim September 30th, 2021 as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 10th day of September, 2021. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented? Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration doesn't have any amendments to the agenda at this time.
Thank you very much. CEO.
Yeah, Your Worship, members of council, if I could just take a second, I'd like to introduce you to a lady to my left. This is Sandy Boujea. She is our Director of Legislative Services. And Sandy comes with a lot of experience and a lot of exposure, and is going to be able to enhance the services that we've been providing and complement the skills of Shalane. So we're really looking forward to Sandy joining us. And I know because she's here, you're going to be on your best behavior, but she already looked at a bunch of previous council meetings, so she knows your true character. So nice try. Thank you very much. And welcome, Sandy.
Thank you.
Welcome to the City of Beaumont. Pleased to have you here. You were telling stories, weren't you, CAO? Okay. All right. Consent agenda. We have two items on the can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Which brings us to the consent agenda. There are two items on tonight's agenda, so I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting, August 24th, 2021. That council accept the minutes of August 24th, 2021 regular council meeting as presented. And item 10A, Councillor Barnhart's report, that council accept Councillor Barnhart's report as information. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Which brings us to item 4, open forum. We have nobody currently registered to speak in the open forum this evening. Ms. Winter,
Thank you, Your Worship. We do not have any registrations for the open forum this evening.
thank you. And we have no public hearings. We have no registered presentations, which brings us to business item 8A, 2021-2022 council work plan. Who will speak? Mr. Dowler. Mr. Dowler, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you and members of council. Before council this evening is a brief presentation and report on 2021-2022 council work plan. What you have before you this evening is a brief summary overview of the activities, significant activities that administration is planning for the first basically 3 quarters, 9 months of the new council term. With any election, administration is busy with continuing approved projects and planning for the new year, and already a full schedule in a typical year becomes even busier in the year of an election. So in preparation for this busy period, administration has been working through some scheduling and planning on how all these activities can be completed in a timely manner. But as most of you well know, certainly in the fall, after an election, it's a very busy time for council and administration. I'll just touch on some of the big items here, starting with the first quarter, or kind of the third quarter of the fiscal year, October to December. The first big activity, of course, is council orientation. So shortly after the municipal election results are made official, the orientation for the new council will begin. First and foremost, the swearing in of the new council and going through that first organizational meeting. This is followed up by several meetings, again, of which most of you are familiar. So not a lot in that respect has changed in terms of what we've got planned. However, what you're likely going to see if you are part of the new council is some of the content may be a little bit different. However, overall, we're still expecting the sessions to be generally of the same themes, to include information for the City of Beaumont's organization, key council policies, governance, general information and statistics on Beaumont, some of the social challenges that we're faced with, community safety, and the public inquiry process. Moving on from council orientation, of course, the other big activity that'll happen in the fall, 2022 proposed budget presentation and then deliberations. What you'll see again is a presentation from administration sometime in the first part of November, with budget deliberations scheduled for a few days towards the end of November. And so very similar to what it was last year. This, however, is a little bit complicated more from a scheduling perspective because we have the AUMA conference or convention this year, middle part of November. So that is overlapping some of the timing that we typically have with the proposed budget deliberations. Administration has held 7 registrations for all members of the new council to attend in November. As far as I know, it's still a in-person conference, but that may be changing as we see COVID numbers shifting. The last piece for the first quarter, first and final quarter of the fiscal year is the third quarter financial report. And so this will be one of the first financial reports the new council will see, which administration will provide a financial update to the end of the third quarter. More importantly, though, it will include a forecast of where we expect to be at the end of the year, particularly as it relates to any surplus or deficit that we may be forecasting. Moving into the first part of the new year, a big piece that we are scheduling for the new council is a council strategic planning session. So of course, you are all well aware the current strategic plan, or our Beaumont Municipal Strategic Plan 2017 to 2021, will expire at the end of 21. And so one of the first significant tasks outside of approving a budget will be the strategic planning sessions for council that will allow council to put a stamp on the vision that they have for the next 4 years. The process that we have been talking about will involve a number of sessions that will hopefully allow council to collect and work through their thoughts and vision for Beaumont. And then, of course, will result in the creation and communication of a new strategic plan. The other piece that administration has scheduled for that first part is a bit of a review on the automated enforcement program. And this goes back to some previous council motions that were approved that administration needs to follow up on. And so in an endeavor to do that, administration will undertake a review of the program itself, which will include a public consultation process, and then bringing a traffic enforcement plan to council for their approval. And then going into the next quarter, it really is more business as usual, as I would like to frame it. And of course, there'll be a lot of other activities happening, but big pieces the new council will see towards the end of April, mid to end of April, a budget amendment for 2022. So it's kind of the last part of the process before we approve the budget. So finalize some of the numbers, specifically as it relates to assessment growth. And then any kind of further adjustments that we may need based on potentially a provincial budget that could be announced. And then that leads us into the 2022 tax rate bylaw. So again, you're looking at towards the end of April, having that in front of council so that administration can move forward with releasing the tax notices to the community so that we can collect taxes by the end of June. So again, those are the big pieces. And I would certainly be happy to answer any questions council may have of what was presented or in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deller. Appreciate the report and the forecasting look for what's on council's agenda for the next 9 months or so. It's going to be packed. It's going to be busy. So yeah, appreciate that. And so everybody that's running for council should take note of what's ahead of us. Open it up for questions from members of council. Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, thank you. Question on the minutia of the details. Will there be a facility tour for the new council?
Mr. Keller.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks, for the question. I do think that is part of the orientation that we are looking at planning. So don't have the specific details on all the activities, but that certainly I know is one thing that past councils have appreciated. So that is something that we are looking at scheduling for this new council as well.
Ms. Winter, anything further to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to confirm with what Mr. Deller had said, that we do have a tour planned.
Thank you very much. Follow up, Councillor Hendricks. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Deller, for the report. My question is probably in terms of process and content to what you're looking at and bringing forward for the next council to pay attention to. And I'm wondering why only the automated enforcement program is highlighted in terms of an issue. I understand it's big and there's revenue attached to that, but at the same time, the social master plan, the arts facility, newcomer services, there's a number of other things that this council has kind of put into motion, and there's work to be done and it's coming back. So I'm wondering, I guess, twofold. One is there a reason why one particular project was singled out here? And secondly, how will the new council receive information on all of those other ideas that are still in the works?
So thank you very much for your question, Councillor Barnard. So in terms of the automated enforcement project or program being singled out here, it was not in any intention to slight any of the other projects that are ongoing in nature. But it was singled out here as a follow-up to some previous council motions that administration hadn't had an opportunity to deal with to this point. And so we wanted to make sure that it was on our radar and to show that it was on our radar and to make sure that the new council knew and understood that it was also on our radar and to be prepared for it come the new year. In terms of the other projects that you mentioned, there's a couple of opportunities with the new council where I would look for us to be bringing up to speed the new council on the status and what's going on with those projects. Certainly one being through the council orientation package. So we're again yet finalizing the details on what that package looks like, but one section certainly is ongoing projects, which those would fit in. And then the second opportunity to bring up the new council up to speed on those projects would be through the budget process itself. So those master plans and some of the plans that you had mentioned certainly have implications around services, some demands for resources. So those would be coming through in the 2022 proposed budget potentially.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dowler. And I do appreciate that there's a lot of information to sift through here. Newcomer services, in my recollection, is one of them that we have a motion that there was to be something come back at budget time. So I'm just hoping that all of the motions that are unfinished are followed up on, and I'm sure that Ms. Winter does that matter of course, but that would be my hope, that the next council sees the motions and is aware of those things that have not yet come to fruition. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions of Mr. Dowler on this particular item? All right, seeing none, is there a member of council willing to move acceptance of this report as information? All right, Councillor Danlock.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Which brings us to item 8B, Beaumont Performing Arts Collective Proposal. CAO.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you to the rest of council, members of public. You have a report in front of you as a result of a motion that was made in June 8th of 2021 at the regular council meeting, at which time council directed administration to bring back the Beaumont Performing Arts Collective proposal to the August 17th Committee of the Whole meeting. That meeting got moved to August 24th and due to scheduling and BIN did not have any staff available to present at that time. So it's unfortunate. We didn't bring it to the Committee of the Whole. So this was really our only other option. It was to bring it today or to move it into the next term, which certainly is an option. So we thought we'd present it to you tonight and see if you have an appetite to follow our recommendation. And we think this recommendation makes sense. It allows the conversation to continue via the Performing Arts Steering Committee. And why the Steering Committee is, we feel that this opportunity is no different than any of the other scenarios that group is looking at. Partnerships, or looking at standalones, or looking at P3s. At this point, all the options are on the table. The committee has been very actively meeting. They meet bi-weekly and is making some very good progress. So the recommendation that we're making is that council receive the Beaumont Performing Arts Collective proposal as information and refer the proposal to the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee for review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Is there a member of council willing to make a motion? Councillor Stout.
Sorry, Your Worship, fumbling with the buttons there.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm not in support of this. I'd like to see this come back to the Committee of the Whole for discussion, as council originally directed. I'm not comfortable sending it to the Performing Arts to the steering committee, because I think that's actually is a separate discussion, and I'd like council to have the opportunity to discuss this proposal, discuss partnership opportunities and funding options that we might consider before we decide if we want to follow it or not. So for that reason, no, I'm not sure. I thought that we'd originally directed administration to bring this back to a committee of the whole meeting, which got cancelled and then didn't take place, let's say, effectively. So what I'd like to do is to bring this back to a subsequent committee of the whole meeting post-election, as CAO Schwartz indicated was another option. And do I need to make a motion to do that, or if we defeat this motion, does that one still stand?
No, if you wanted to move to a committee of the whole down the way, you need to make a motion so that council can
Okay,
discuss
well,
and
I'm
debate it.
willing to do that right now. I'd move that we send this proposal for future discussion by council in November at a committee of the whole meeting, for discussion for full discussion and explore opportunities.
Okay, so your motion is to refer this to the next committee of the whole meeting after the election.
Yes.
Fair enough. Discussion on the motion. Do you have anything further to add, Councillor Stout, before we move on to other members of council?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from other members of council.
Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Stout, for putting forward that motion, because that's where I was at. I am at. I do not support this, and I would like to ask the administration a question, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
CAO Schwartz, I just wonder if the proponents of this proposal were consulted before this recommendation was put together.
CEO.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Barnhart, through the mayor to yourself and the rest of council. No, they were not. The recommendation or the notice, sorry, the motion was for administration to bring back a recommendation to council. So that's what we did. So to my knowledge, there was no consultation.
Could I clarify then? Thank you for that, because that is my recollection from what I've heard from the proponents themselves. It was my understanding that what council was looking for was more information about how they actually were going to make it work, because it was very difficult with the information. We still have very little information in terms of how is that going to be managed, be run, et cetera. And even when I look at the attachments that are here, which I mentioned to the proponents, there's a line that says GST, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, we don't have enough information yet. So for the proponents to be involved in that next COTW would be my preference, not just the administration. I think we need to hear the proponents themselves make the case as to why this is a potential option. And they, from what I gather, they were under the impression they were coming back to a COTW to present that additional information, and they've been working on that. So I think it's more than just council hearing from the administration. I think we need to hear the proponents make their case.
And that's absolutely an option for council. We took the motion on its merits, and we're planning to bring it back to a committee where I suppose that conversation could have occurred. Absolutely.
And if I could, Mayor, just on one other point that Councillor Stout mentioned, I appreciate it, is that the steering committee that we formed to look at the feasibility of a citywide arts facility, in my mind, the terms of reference do not include reviewing other proposals like this. To me, that's more of an arts council piece of work. So I think we're expanding their terms of reference if we do that. And I would think that should come back to the next council if we're doing that.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I guess through to Councillor Stout. So the presentation was put in front of us. You know, the two presenters had, provided us their proposal. We had a chance to look at it. I'm just curious around, why wouldn't we just have this conversation now? If you're willing to have the conversation, a committee of the whole, in a month or two, it's going to be the exact same people here to have that conversation. So why why wouldn't we just have this discussion now? I mean, you could easily put a motion on the floor to approve one of the two options here, that they're, looking for seed money for 3 million or 9 million. We could easily have that conversation right now. Yeah, just punting it down 2 months to a next council. I mean, they asked this council. I think this council should deal with this matter. So why wouldn't we deal with this now?
Councillor Stout?
Because the presenters aren't here, and because the CAO has just told us that no further consultation took place, so there's no new information. The information presented here doesn't make a lot of sense to me, so I'm certainly not in a position to make a decision on it this evening. And I think it bears further discussion.
And just to follow up, and I mean, the two presenters had, I think it was about 10 minutes to come and present their vision previously. Personally, I had enough from there to get out of that where I would go with this. I think, we need to provide a bit of certainty to these folks. And if we just keep kicking it down the road, I personally can't see, I absolutely support what they're trying to do here. I just don't think there should be city funding attached to this. I said this 3 months ago when it came up. So I don't support asking to move to the next committee of the whole meeting when I know I'm not going to spend taxpayer dollars on this collective that they're looking for from us. So for me, I think we can answer this question here. That there's nothing stopping these representatives from approaching the Arts Council to Councillor Barnhart's point to talk about that and get that back going through that process. It could be a recommendation to if they wanted to bring it forward as a recommendation for the budget process. But for council to sit here and do this, as you know, a committee of the whole meeting, the presenter, usually it's administration who sits and talks around it. We've got the information that was there. The numbers are pretty significant, 3 million, 9 million. I don't think we need to keep kicking this down the road. So I don't support the motion to move to November. I think this council can deal with it here now, or to administration's point, let them work, whether it's the Performing Arts Steering Committee or whether it's to approach the Arts Council to bring that recommendation through the Arts Council back to the new council. That's a whole separate process. So I'll leave it there for now. But yeah, I certainly, I heard enough the first time around and don't need to go through it again. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Monkoff-Swain hit the nail on the head with one of the words, and that's certainty. We heard from the presenters when they first came and shared their vision with council. And what we heard and what I specifically asked is, if this funding wasn't approved, do you have a plan B? And the answer was yes. So my concern is that, if we punt this conversation 2 months down the road and then continue to ponder after that discussion another 2 weeks before a meeting comes together, then we're well into budget season. And if there was an opportunity to do that, this conversation just continues to snowball. And the ability to get something done, I think, disappears for them if we don't make a decision. So I don't support the motion that's on the floor to move this conversation down the road. I think that where my head was going to be at, should we have had the conversation at committee of the whole or here tonight, was actually exactly what the administration has put forward, is the council receive the proposals information and refer it to the Performing Arts Steering Committee for review. That committee can decide what they think. They could meet with the proponent, they could do those things, but I don't think that we provide certainty to the group, and I don't think it's fair to punt the conversation down the road when clearly they're trying to establish something and move something forward. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
All right, seeing just one last quick, we're in round one, so any councillors that haven't spoken yet before I start on round two? Okay, so that'll close the speaking notes for round one. Councillor Barnhart opens up round two.
Thank you, Mayor. So 2 words that you've said, Councillor Van Newkirk, fair and certainty. It's not fair that this group thought they were coming back to a COTW and they were not consulted before this report shows back on our table. And we're voting on it when they're not here. That's not fair. That's not a good process at all. And having talked to the proponent, as I'm sure many of us have, that really sends a message to community members that, you know, the effort they put into this was not worth it. And I agree that there's some real difficulty in the proposal as it sits, but I think there's nothing wrong with having them come back and make that proposal and adapt it to the next council and present it in a way that it could be approved. And I think it's sad that no one from the administration has been able to work with them to make that proposal work. Instead, it comes back almost as a, it's never going to be approved if we see it as an operating grant for that many millions of dollars. But could it be approved as a temporary rental? Absolutely. Council could look at other ways to approve that, but it's not coming back to us in a form that way. It's coming back to us as, let's kill this now. And I'm sorry to use that language, but that's how it reads to me. And I do think that if you want certainty, we should have been clearer to the proponents that this is coming back and council's going to vote on whether to proceed or not to proceed. That's not the motion that's in front of us. And I think that would be unfair to go to that point. So I'm at this point supporting Councillor Stout's motion.
Councillor Monkhouse-Swain.
Did you want to respond to that, or? Yeah, I mean, just on the fairness piece, to be clear, I didn't support moving it, you know, whenever that was 2 months ago. I didn't support moving it to this conversation for the exact same reason. So the reason why I don't think we need to move it again is for everything that I said 2 months ago. I recognize that that's where council landed, and you know, we're going to move forward with that. But I wasn't supportive of this 2 months ago. I'm not supportive of it now. So that's what I'm talking about, not wanting to move it forward. I recognize that, you know, the folks who presented that vision to us, you know, they thought that this was going to be in front of committee of the whole, and I get the frustration there. I just think that at this point, for me to now vote to extend it in November contradicts my original vote, and I'm not going to do that. So that's my rationale for not supporting the motion here.
Okay,
Seems like we're debating.
we are debating. We're in debate.
But just one point you made, council made that decision. And now you're saying you know, I mean, when council makes a decision, we go with what council decided. Council said, bring it back to a COTW. It has not come back to a COTW. So that decision was made, and somehow the administration has said that they're changing that. And we didn't change that.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here.
That's my point.
Appreciate that. I'm going to jump in there because before we get into this back and forth, because I'm going to speak in favor of Councillor Stout's motion tonight. For all the reasons that Councillor Barnhart has said, the Performing Arts Steering Committee, their work is scheduled to end in 2022 is when the report comes back. CAO.
Yeah, not off the top of my head, I believe you're correct.
Yeah.
It's not next year.
And I think it bears on council to be able to have a discussion to see if it's worth expending that committee's time on this topic. And I think it bears a robust discussion in a committee of the whole. And we have time to do that. So even if we voted tonight to send it to the proposal of the Performing Arts Steering Committee, it's not coming back to council until it comes back as part of that report. So for that reason, I'm going to support moving it to a committee of the whole so that future council can have a robust discussion surrounding it. And we'll go from there. Councillor Van Newkirk, you haven't spoken yet during round 2.
Sure, thank you. One of the things that concerns me around asking a group of volunteers and people to do something and putting the group together to do that thing. And we heard from administration tonight that the steering committee right now is meeting bi-weekly, and they're trying to move forward with the mandate that was given. I can't imagine how it would feel to be on a volunteer committee like that that is working diligently in the direction that they've been asked, only to wonder what, curveball might be thrown at them, from a separate council discussion. I guess my question, Mayor, would be, have we armed the steering committee and guided them correctly if we're going to go off and have a separate conversation about another opportunity? One of the reasons, and I think the main reason for me that I suggest and that I would support moving this document to the steering committee is so that they're working with all of the information that is out there. If we punt this conversation down the road and we're having a side conversation about some other arrangement for an arts facility over here, I'm concerned that work that the previous council will be doing, thinking they're helping, is actually going to be a hindrance to the steering committee, because the steering committee they're trying to move forward with what the information they have. So if there's a side conversation that can come and derail the work that they've done, that would be pretty deflating. So, that's where, what I would say kind of in response to what your comments were, right? Like, it's a group of volunteers trying to move something forward. We've put a timeline on them, and we need to arm them with the best and complete information. If we don't refer this piece to them soonest, which would be now, then are they working with all the information in front of them? That's my concern. Thank you.
No, fair enough. I am going to try to avoid going in a circle here. So we'll let Councillor Margoff Swain go, then Councillor Dallin go, and then we'll cut it off, but only if there's new information to be had. Councillor Margoff Swain.
Just trying to make sure I don't say anything that I haven't said before, given your direction, and that's totally fair. I think this proposal is great. I hope it goes through. I don't think city funds should go towards this. We've got one opportunity to build a performing arts facility in Beaumont, and we've directed a committee to do that. We can't chip off $9 million out of that. Moving it to that, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk has convinced me that moving it to that, and I know we're debating Councillor Stout's motion, but moving it to that collective group is the cleanest way for me. So yeah, I'll just close by saying again I'll be voting against the motion, and hope that others also follow suit, so that we can give that new committee that we've got up that is doing very, very well a chance to know everything that's going on in the city. So thanks, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, for eloquently summarizing that. That's me. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Daniluk, and then we'll call the question.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, councillors, for your opinions. I am struggling with this a little bit because, as other councillors mentioned, I back in June was not in favor of proceeding with the ask of $3 or $9 million. Council voted to move to a COW meeting. I opposed that motion, but council made a motion and it carried the due majority to move to a COW meeting. And I know we decided to forego the COW meeting in August for various reasons for scheduling. And I think we inadvertently took this off our radar because of the commitment we made to do that. And I'm also uncomfortable with the idea of pushing it down the road to have the new council do something that we sort of got initiated. So I find myself struggling with the fact that I think it's a little unfair that we didn't do what we said we would do. It went to the COW, which I didn't approve that motion, but it went through nonetheless. That was council decision, and to go to the COW, which didn't happen. So I'm not comfortable with not doing what we said we would do. I do support Councilor McCobb-Swain and Councilor Van Nieuwkerk's reasoning to deal with it tonight. I honestly do in my heart, but procedurally speaking, I feel we made a commitment and we didn't fulfill on it. So I am struggling with this motion, but I'm leaning towards supporting it because I feel we did not do what we said we would do. And even the reasons are mine. I agree with Councilor Van Nieuwkerk and Councilor McCobb-Swain, but there's still that itching point that we didn't do what we said we would do, despite the reasons why. And I struggle with that because we, the council, have done a very good job of following through with our commitments. We made one, and we're not going to fulfill that, which I'm uncomfortable with that. That's the biggest reason I'm uncomfortable with that. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. All right, I see two further requests to speak, and I did say I was going to call this question. Are we just, is it new? If it's not new, Councillor Van Newkirk.
Just to speak to Councillor Daniluk for a quick second, acknowledging that the point of, we didn't say what we didn't do what we said we were going to do. I hear you, but the next best thing we can do is the best we can. And the best we can right now, having not got there, is to arm the committee who has been tasked with moving this forward with all of the information and not bring a side conversation, to them unfairly later. That's what I would say. Thank you.
So it wasn't new. The first half was. All right, we're going in a circle. If we're just going to be reiterating points, I am going to close this off and call this question. And I don't want to stifle discussion because I always said that we would do this, but we're going in circles. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. This is good. This is fun. It's our last meeting. Let's go. So just to Councillor Daniluk's point, you said that we didn't fulfill our commitment. I couldn't disagree more. We asked administration to bring it to a committee of the whole meeting. That meeting got cancelled, so they put it on this agenda, that last meeting. So that's done. We're meeting it. We met that commitment. It's in front of us, the information here. We can have the discussion if we want. So I just wanted to make that point that I think we administration did fulfill that commitment. No one's fault that meeting got cancelled. It's here in front of us for the last meeting. So just wanted to make that last point.
All right. Councillor Stout, Councillor Daniluk, Councillor Barnhart, and then the question's getting called. I don't care if you light it up.
Okay, I'll be very brief. I completely disagree with the points made by Councillors Montgomery and Van Newkirk last. No, we didn't do what we said we were going to do. So the best thing that we can do to fix that is to do what we said we were going to do, albeit belatedly. In my view, I'm sorry, I really don't. Sending it somewhere else for somebody else to talk about is not the best solution. And as regards, what was the other point? Oh yes, and we didn't do what we were going to do. No, we didn't do what we said we were going to do. We said we would bring it back to a committee of the whole, much less formal circumstance than this, where we can have, as Mayor Stewart's already referred to, a robust discussion about what the options are, about where this might go. And that's not the same as bringing it in front of a council meeting with no new information, with none of the people that presented this present, or even if they were present, there wouldn't be an opportunity for them to speak. So no, I don't believe we did what we said we were going to do. And I believe that if we didn't do what we said we were going to do, then the best thing to do, the best remedy for that is to try and do it. I acknowledge that, yes, bringing it back to a committee of the whole after another election when maybe none of us are still here is a second best, but that under the circumstances is the best we can do.
Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. One last comment I want to make briefly, if I could. The suggestion of moving it to the Performing Arts Steering Committee, I'm not comfortable with that idea also because the steering committee has a mandate to advise council on a potential performing arts center that'll be city-owned and operated. This venture is completely not city-owned or operated, which I have discussed before, my concern of giving $3 million or $9 million. I'm not in favor of that. I'm not sure how the model could work, but I'm willing to listen to a potential model. But the steering committee, I believe, is going to come back to council with a city-owned vision for a performing arts center. So I'm not comfortable with this even going to them. So that's what I'm saying. I'd have to go to the committee of the whole and we can deal with it at that point. So thank you for letting me speak one more time. Thank you.
Councillor Barnhart.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor. And I just want to put out a point here. Nothing stops the administration or council from sending information to the steering committee so they're aware. To your point, Councillor Van Newkirk, about the committee being blindsided or not knowing what else is going on. There's nothing stopping us from sending them the information. It's different to send it to them and say, we want you to make a decision on this. That's what I'm objecting to. It's not fair also for the residents who have put the time and energy into this proposal to not have been given sufficient time and consultation before this proposal starts to get voted on by this council. I think that would be totally inappropriate. There's been no notice given that we would be having that discussion. And to vote on that, based on what I have in front of me right now, would be inappropriate in my mind. We have not got answers to our questions about what does that mean about the GST in here? What other options have you looked at? Could you operate it a different way? So those are my points, Mayor, and I will vote in favor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Barnhart. So we'll call the question on the motion to move this item to the next committee of the whole meeting after the election. All in favor? And that carries 5-2. Councilors Monkoff, Swain, and Van Newkirk in opposition. Everyone else in favor. Thank you very much, Council. I really do appreciate the discussion that was had on this. It's not an easy item, especially as we're trying to wrap the term up. Which brings us to item 8C, notice of motion made by myself. As always, we'll get the city clerk to introduce it, and then the motion maker will speak to it.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the audience to the members of council. According to the meeting's procedural bylaw, once the notice of motion is made, it's placed on the next regular council agenda. At the August 24th, 2021 regular council meeting, Mayor Stewart made the following notice of motion that council direct administration to reallocate the $18,437 of funds remaining, of the remaining funds from the small business support grant to the University of Alberta's digital marketing grant to allow for a maximum of 23 Beaumont businesses to apply for this grant. At this time, administration is looking for direction on how council wishes to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Winter. So I will make the motion that council direct administration to reallocate the $18,437 of the remaining funds from the small business support grant to the University of Alberta's digital marketing grant to allow for a maximum of 23 Beaumont businesses to apply for this grant. And the reasoning I have is this: when we originally allocated the funding to the small business grant to allow small business to access funds to be able to access greater funds from other levels of government. The uptake was originally there. We had a lot of businesses do it, and in the end, we only had 3 submit receipts to get paid out. And this money, if we don't reallocate it towards the digital marketing grant, is going to come back and go right back into reserves. Whereas, as we all know, during the pandemic, it's really important for businesses to have a digital footprint. And I did send council some information yesterday about what this what the digital marketing grant is. So I'm hoping you've had a chance to review it, but I think it's an excellent way, both for the students at the University of Alberta to get some practical experience in marketing businesses, and for businesses to get some practical help getting themselves online. And so I'm going to ask council tonight to reallocate that funding rather than allow it to come back to reserves, and keep it out there so that our small businesses can access this funding and get online. The grant would be working the same way as the last one. It'd be a partnership between the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, the Leduc and Wetaskiwin Chamber of Commerce, and the University of Alberta, and ourselves. And it would go from there. Open it up to questions and comments from members of council. Councilor Barnhart, followed by Councilor Monkoff-Swain.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward. I too want to see it stay in the flow here for businesses to apply for the money. And I'm just wondering if we have any, did we learn anything from the way it was communicated before? Is that kind of why it didn't get used up, or were there some other reasons? Because I don't want the same thing to happen again. And I've heard from people that, what more can we do for businesses? And I said, well, there was a grant, we did approve it. Yeah. What happened? So I don't know if we've analyzed that and evaluated it. If you have anything we can do to improve it so that people actually get it in their businesses and can use the money.
That's a good question, and I'm going to defer that one to admin. I was hoping Mr. Mackin would be here tonight to weigh in on that, but CAO or Mr. Bsrc.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart. I'll answer that as best as I can. Mr. Mackin's not here tonight, but I do have some familiarity with the program, and I did have some conversations with the Leduc Chamber about the program. And as I recall, they actually did have an initial uptake that would have come close to exhausting the full grant program. But then when it came to follow up and eligibility, and as the chamber worked with the businesses through that, the actual number of successful grant applicants or applicants that were eligible or actually followed through with the paperwork required was much smaller.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bsrc, do you have any way of knowing if that eligibility criteria was the problem? Like, is there any way we could, if we did it ourselves versus doing it through the chamber, is that, I don't even know what that would mean in terms of the cost of doing that, but is there some way we can fix that? Because I'd hate to think that the eligibility criteria are getting in the way of people getting the help they need.
Again, you know, to the best of my knowledge and from my conversations with Leduc Chamber, part of it was understanding what the grant was actually for, that it was for help with bookkeeping or accounting work to apply for federal or provincial grant programs. A number of the businesses that applied for the grant mistakenly thought it was for bookkeeping services for tax returns.
I think the communications on this one's very specific about My Digital and getting on, and the university, and it's actually a really good partnership with the University of Alberta. I don't think we would have that same marketing problem. It's different. Councillor Markov-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thanks. And so upfront, yes, support it. Thanks for bringing this forward. My question and comments are going to be around the communication around, you know, what we can do to make sure folks are aware of it. But you all heard that from, so I won't get on that anymore. But I support this and looking forward to voting on it.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I also support the motion, Mayor, and thank you for the pre-reading up front. That was very much appreciated. Just to add some of the feedback I heard on the original grant, seeing so we did have a little side conversation on that. One of the barriers that was brought to me or brought to my attention is that many firms already have existing relationships with accountants, and accountants, you know, cost X number of dollars per hour to, you know, to engage to get stuff done. And, you know, with the amount that this grant would be getting versus how much time from an accountant you would get, there just wasn't the benefit to it. So that was some of the feedback that was brought to me. So thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I wish to support the motion as well. Just one very brief question, if you don't mind. So my understanding is that the money allocated will be only for Beaumont businesses only in that fund, or can other businesses access it as well?
Well,
I'm assuming
no,
Beaumont only.
these particular funds will be for Beaumont businesses.
That's what I thought, just to clarify.
Other
Thank you.
municipalities and other levels of government are throwing extra dollars in.
Thank you
for
for
their own
clarifying.
businesses. Seeing no further requests to speak, I will call the question. All in favor? Oh, hang on. All in favor? Councillor Stout. There we go. And that carries unanimously. Appreciate council support in reallocating those funds. Helping our businesses out in this time is, I think, if we take a small step to do it, I think we should. Brings us to item 9, bylaws. We have none. Brings us to item 10, councillor inquiries and reports. Do members of council have a question for administration this evening? Councillor Hendricks.
Hi, Your Worship. Thank you to the administration. Just on the previous discussions with the Star Catholic Board and the developers meeting, I just wondered what the status is of that meeting.
CEO.
I was quickly looking for my notes to have the date. The meeting occurred August 28th, I'm going to say, just before the school term went into place. We had 3 developers in the room, 4th couldn't make it. We came up with some good progress, and we're wanting to set up a follow-up meeting with the superintendents, Black Gold and Star Catholic, and with our MLA to try and expedite or have the application process changed. The whole notion of allocating the engineering money in 1 year and then building a number of years, and the whole notion of these cookie cutter schools that require 20 acres of land, because land is very tough. As you know, the MGA requires us to, or requires a developer to provide 10%. Well, some of these developments are 40 and 80 acres, and that 10% of 8 acres is not enough. But we're exploring a partnership between two developers that would be able to satisfy perhaps a joint school or two schools. We think we're much more optimistic that we can provide the schools what they're looking for. It was a good meeting.
Follow up.
So this level of communication relative to what happened at the meeting and to the school board is being communicated how? From us to them?
I don't understand.
Well, I guess, and thank you for sharing what came out of that meeting. It's a surprise to me that the meeting was held, but thank you for doing that. But now we're getting asks from school board members, it appears, wanting to know what Walmart's going to do or may not do or can do relative to this discussion. So, my memory of the process and what we've been doing through MDPs and everything else is to try to assemble lands and monies for lands, mainly, and I'm going to use the old subdivision term, Royer Plains, where we thought we had potentially 3 locations for 3 different schools assembled, and it was going to be a large mass of land. But just to get that information back to those who are reaching out to us as counselors, so we can answer, with the information you just provided.
Well, I'll put together an issues briefing and get it out to council.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something that you won't have an issue with us sharing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, I was actually going to go down that same pathway as well. So I'm very glad to hear that the meeting happened. I'm glad to hear the outcome of that meeting because, what I hope is that there's collaboration and all the groups in the room are there to talk about it. Where we are at with it today is that current councillors and council candidates are being lobbied and asked by school board presidents who aren't informed about the fact that this meeting happened. So that is creating questions and concern in the community, I think unduly. There are folks who are bringing what they figure to be tough questions, looking for tough answers, and wanting to post answers to questions in the next meeting minutes of their school boards. So I really hope we can streamline these communications through Black Gold, and I hope Black Gold is able to share with the conversations that have happened down through the schools into the school boards. This communication issue also manifested itself with the school boards around the rink, where there was conversations, the rink at Bellevue School, where there were conversations about this or that happening that weren't communicated down through to the actual school, which made it into the school, the parent council, and then all of a sudden the municipality and councils being lobbied for something that the direction was already given by the school board. So I really don't want to be going down this path again. I know that many folks have already responded to some of these asks that have came from the school boards. So whatever administration can do to support the information from that meeting and the positive steps that are going forward to get into the hands of those people and better inform them, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
And if I could comment on that briefly, and I think I know where you're going with this, that a lot of that communication responsibility is certainly with the school board. They're sitting at the table with us. But that said, it wouldn't behoove me to send them a nudge and say, hey, superintendents, the message is not getting back. Trustees, it didn't get back. So yeah, no, your point's taken. Thank you.
All right, seeing no, Councilor Margolis Swain.
Thanks. Just a question for Mr. Dowler here. Just regarding an item on the project dashboard. I think you're still with us, Mr. Dowler.
I am, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
You say,
You don't need to come back on camera. You look.
he's here, right?
So first of all, maybe just a shout out. The project dashboard, again, great. The amount of questions I get on where different things are at. And historically, I would just hit forward to administration. Now I can just look up the answer myself. So great work on that. I see it's updated monthly. But one question that I had, specific question, was just regarding the pumper. We call it the protective service fleet renewal. Approved budget of $1.3 million there, coming from grants. The estimated start date, this year, but end date next year. When we look at the completion, it's only 31 to 60%. So I'm just curious, have we ordered that and only a certain amount of budget goes out and then we pay it over time? And how does that reconcile with the fiscal year? So I'm just curious on an update on where we're at with that ladder truck that we wanted to purchase.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. And CAO Schwartz may have some further details, but essentially what you kind of outlined around the finances is exactly the situation. What typically happens in these situations is there's a down payment or a deposit that's required for the equipment first and foremost. And then payment, the balance of payment usually happens on delivery. And so there is that bit of a time delay that we have now. This is where maybe relying on CAO Schwartz, he may have some different information on the timelines. And if so, then we would be looking at updating the dashboard to reflect that.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that, Mr. Dollar, is those trucks take between 18 to 24 months to build. So what we do is we go down, we spec it, we have a look at some that are similar. We get so far down into the design phase or the build phase, and then we go back down again and customize some of the things that we want. But you're right, we paid a down payment. We expect delivery. I think it's in the end of 2022 or maybe the beginning of 2023. So that's where that's at.
Okay, thanks. And the genesis of my question was just around the financial side of things, and because the funding source is grants, whether we pay it out in this fiscal year or next one, it doesn't matter because that just kind of carries on. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm going to go to Mr. Dollar on that. Play a little tennis here, Mike.
Yeah. That definitely is correct, Councillor Monkoff-Swain. The grant dollars are allocated, and that's how we would track them. They're not available to be used in other projects or anything like that.
Yeah, perfect. And so it wouldn't show up in the budget, in next council's budget. It wouldn't show up that we've got $600,000 left in grants like that. That is spent. We obviously can't play with that. We've made that commitment, so it'll just be sit in the grant kitty, and you'll use that expense when you need. Okay, thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Yeah.
Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to completely switch gears and deliver some kudos. We had Town and Country Days this past weekend, and there was a lot of people out and a lot of people having a great time. I would really like to thank the events committee, for the community events committee, for all of the work that was done to get that together, and to to see all the smiling faces and happy people out and about is great. And just really want to give an extra special thank you to Councillor Hendricks for pulling the parade out of the fire. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for mentioning that, Councillor Van Newkirk. A lot of people put a lot of work into doing that. So Councillor Hendricks, thank you. And to the volunteers and the special events committee who did yeoman's work to get that off the ground. Appreciate all their efforts as well. All right, seeing no further requests to speak, I'm going to reserve my mark. I have some closing remarks for this session, but I'm going to reserve them till the very last second. So we'll go to the CAO's update.
Yes, thank you very much. A few items to piggyback off of Councillor Van Newkirk. I thought the function last week was fantastic. I haven't found a negative comment yet, and the community events committee definitely pulled some rabbits out of hats to pull that off. So thank you for that. Your connections across the region were certainly helpful, and it was seamless. Nobody even knew what was going on behind the scenes, and all of a sudden, poof. So that's a tribute to that committee and our volunteers and the staff. And we also had the grand opening of the Bsrc. So that was pretty exciting as well. It's been a long time coming. And again, all I hear is what a fabulous building that is. Reminding folks that we have an upcoming election, October 18th. This is your last sort of official meeting, if you will. Please watch our website for most up-to-date information. Remind folks that the federal election is, of course, September 20th, and the advanced polling was completed yesterday. So get out and vote. Unfortunately, still talking about COVID. Currently in Beaumont, we've got 94 cases, so we're sitting at 491.1 per 100,000, which puts us about 5th and 6th of the region. A lot of our regional partners are in worse shape. But from a province's perspective, there's 822 people in hospital and over 200 in the ICU, 212. That shatters the previous high, which was 182. It's dire out there, and you're hearing those stories of people, having routine, not routine, but it's somebody getting into a car accident and having to be shipped several cities away. I'm even told as far away as Vancouver is what we could be looking at. And that's really going to back things up. And it's just a dangerous situation. Of the new cases, 71% are unvaccinated. Of the active cases, 70% are unvaccinated. And those currently in hospital, 74% of those are unvaccinated. So I personally respect choice. There's other things that we could be doing, but vaccinations is our way out of this, and whether we like it or not, that is the way out of this. One other project just to talk about very quickly, council, if you recall, approved $40,000 to fix up 50th Avenue from when they moved they buried the utilities, and there were some areas that you wanted the asphalt removed and we were going to replace it with concrete. So that we've been working with the third parties, been burying those utilities. Unfortunately, they've been taking longer than we thought. So quite likely we're not going to get that concrete work done in 2021. So what we'll do is take that $40,000 and put it into the 50th Avenue streetscape project, which will come back to council at budget. We could get lucky here with a warm, dry fall, but the weather's not looking like that's the case. So that may very well end up being a carryover. And with that, I know it's the end of this term. I've got to commend you on the work that you've done in 4 years. I think this city has really transitioned and transformed. A lot of capital projects were built, a lot of services were improved. We're getting a lot of positive feedback that sometimes doesn't always come our way, especially in a municipality, because it can be difficult to get things right. So you've had some marathons, you've slugged it out, and I congratulate all of you. It's been a very successful term as far as I'm concerned, and I'm privileged to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. We have no items of correspondence. We have no more meetings, so we don't need any more notices of motion. And we have no items in a closed session. But I am going to break with tradition. Normally, councillors and mayors speak at item 10. But I am going to close out our final regular council meeting of our term with a few thoughts. And I'd like to commend all my fellow members of council and thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work you have put in over the last 4 years. As the CEO mentioned, it was very, very successful. We came in here with a drive and a vision to support this community with 6 pillars, and I think we've done that. We had a drive to move the economic development scheme, and we have moved that needle a long way. Even though our major projects that are bringing hundreds of millions of dollars into this community are still working their way through the process, we still managed to move the needle to 93.7. And when we started, it was 95.5. So our economic development efforts haven't gone unnoticed and they haven't gone unheard, and I appreciate that. I also appreciated council's willingness to embrace and try new things. Putting Ella on the streets of Beaumont, which was universally well received outside of our borders and not so well with some of our members inside our borders, really was a catalyst for some of the great things that are coming our way. And I thank council for having the vision to approve that project to move forward. I mean, that's what's leading us to the 10 gig network, which is coming, which is Western Canada's fastest internet speeds. It also is led to eventual discussions with our anchor tenant and the Beaumont Innovation Park. So when I say that project led to hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, not kidding, it really did. And that was done by this council. We really did hit the final plans after the annexation was done. We covered a lot of things, the social master plan, the recreation master plan. And then we hit, just to name a couple, and then we started to check the boxes off. I mean, we moved the needle hugely on recreation. the West Recreation Area, 5 ball diamonds and a dog park, the turf field, a possible partnership with Beaumont Minor Football Association. And these are the kind of projects I'm really most proud of. Are projects like the one coming with the Beaumont Minor Football Association to build essentially a clubhouse, and our partnerships with Baja to build the rink over at the Ken Nickel. Our willingness to partner with the community, I think, is second to none, and I appreciate that on this council. We also moved the arts up fair ways. We have an arts policy. We saw the results of it at the Bsrc this weekend with the reveal of some murals. That was the first tangible, besides the Arts Council, that was the first tangible piece of art that came out of that process. So this council has done amazing work over the last 4 years. And as the CEO mentioned, we didn't always agree on everything, but quite frankly, this is municipal politics. It's not party politics. And I do expect that kind of thing will happen from time to time. But everybody was respectful and they brought their opinions to the table. And honestly, with the way the votes went, a lot of them were 7-all or 5-7 or 6-7. I think we came to a lot more consensus than we did to division. And so I really do appreciate this council's willingness to be open and to speak and to move forward. And I wish that the next council the same way. So without getting a little maudlin, because this is literally the last seconds of our last regular council meeting, I'm going to bring it to a close. Hopefully I know we will be having at least one more special meeting, but special meetings going forward will mean our municipality is in trouble and we're having an emergency meeting. So I don't wish that on us. Smooth sailing, and for those that are running for re-election, good luck. And we'll see where we sit on October the 20th. Thank you very much. And our final meeting of Tuesday, September 14th, 2021, the last meeting of our council meeting, our last meeting of our council term is adjourned. Thank you very much.